Hey, everybody, welcome back from our Labor Day break. This is Keep the Mic On. I am your host, Simply Sherry. And as you know, since the start of the quarantine, we have been here almost every week, if not, except for around the holidays, um, to have a conversation with an artist. I am really excited that we are back, and I'm really excited for our feature this evening. If you don't know, my week is third Sundays, and it is called From Behind the Microphone, where we take the time to get to know the artist behind the art because they are people too. And I'll tell you more about my segment at the end of the show because I am next week. I'm going to take a moment and kick it to the one, the only Girl Genius.
Hey everyone, it's Girl Genius. My week is let's talk about the book where I get an author and I pick their brain about their writing, their process, and all the fun things that go along with getting books published. Yay, fun stuff. I am also super excited about this week. I'm super excited about a lot of things. Y'all have no idea. It's going to be a really hectic week, so I'm glad that we're kicking it off in a really in, great, interesting. What's the word I'm looking for? This is going to be a good week. Let's just put it that way. This is a good week. So I am happy to be here, and I am usually the first week of the month. I believe there's going to be a little bit of a swap out come next month. So I will be, I don't know which week. Third, I'm going to swap with Sherry. So let's talk about third week in October. So just so you know, so if you find it a little weird, that's where we are. So anyway, I am going to now kick it to one of my favorite people, poets, the amazing, the talented, the awesome, I'll let her tell you who she is yourself. Lord, I can't talk today. I'm so sorry. Kaniki J.
Hilarious.
I had a whole stuttering moment. My bad.
Hilarious. Thank you, Girl Genius, and thank you, Simply Sherry. Welcome everybody. This is the perfect opportunity for you to tell everybody who does not know that we are live right now, so that they don't miss this awesome and amazing special guest that we have. You know that I'm always excited because when we book people, it be people. You know what I'm saying? It be people when we book people. Okay. I got Charity laughing. I am Kaniki Jakarta. I am happily serving a 3-year term as the first Black poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia. We have been doing this thing here. Keep the mic on for my mathematics is off, but since the pandemic came, we decided we were going to keep the
18 months.
18 months.
For 18 months. So we were pregnant and we birthed it. It's been 18 months, that we have been doing this thing here live. We didn't know we were doing, but now we almost do. We almost know where we are doing. So let me say this because we forget to say this all the time. All of the guests that we have come on here, they do not get paid to do this. They volunteer their time. However, we would love for you to support them and support us because these platforms are not free. So we have a Cash App. It is called Keep the Mic On, spelled correctly, as Simply Sherry would say. So if you would like to drop some coinage in our Cash App, we would so greatly appreciate it. Follow us on all the social media, everything at Keep the Mic On. So tonight, I'm going to kick it to, I call her Pretty Face, the one, the only Charity Joyce Blackwell.
Hey, pew, 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 pew. Oh, schnizzle. Thank you, Kaniki, for introducing me. You got me hype over here. You hype, Tony? Make some noise, Tony. Hey. That's my sister back there. It's loud, it's lit. You know what I'm saying?
Tony!
They say, hey, Tony. All right, that's enough. All right, we back. All right, good. She's not getting paid, so she can't talk too much. Yeah. So thank y'all so much for being here for my segment of Keep the Mic On. My name is Charity Blackwell. I am 1/4 of this amazing collective. And every time I hear how long we've been doing it, 18 months. Not only did we birth it, like Kaniki said, we birthed it twice. 9 + 9 is 18. Yes, I mean, that's 2 babies that we've done with this thing. All right, let's get into it. So my night is called Keep the Mic On, art therapy edition. So I essentially interview artists who use their artwork, their platform, to provide healing, whether that's for themselves and or the audience of which they are performing or providing their art to. I've had a plethora of artists come through, different kind of artists, singers, poets, to come and share their art, talk about how it's healing, hopefully share some of their tips and tricks on how they use their art to provide healing for themselves and others. And I want a lot of people to leave with more than what they came in with, as we would say at Busboys and Poets. I know this has been a very fulfilling journey for me, and I'm just very proud to be a part of it. And knowing that we've been going 18 months strong is just extremely meaningful and awesome. So yeah, tonight we have a very special, very, very special person coming through that I'm going to interview. This person, I know for a fact, provides healing. They provided healing for myself through their art. And I'm just so happy that they agreed to come on and share some of their work, interview, talk to y'all a little bit, and hopefully provide y'all with some of the wonderful healing that they provided with me to y'all as well. So before we bring them on, let me tell you a little bit about this amazing individual, LP. Everybody make some noise for LP. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. When I say make noise, you got to do it on cue. Let's try this again. Everybody make some noise for LP. LP. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Tony. All right, LP has performed at conferences around the world, including Opportunity Collaboration in Mexico, the Skull World Forum in Oxford, England. LP is a Mass Leap trained teaching artist, a TEDx speaker, a former Busboys and Poets host at the Brooklyn location, a member of both Boston's Lizard Lounge and Washington, D.C.'s Busboys and Poets Beltway semifinalist Poetry Slam team 2014 and 2017. LP has toured both individually and with former poetry collectives such as the Flatline Poetry Collective. In 2019, LP traded in poetry career for a full-time position in fitness at Balance Gym. LP now teaches fitness classes both virtually and outdoors, runs corporate projects, and directs the Balance Legree program for Balance Gym. I'll let them talk about that. I don't want to mess that up. Twice a week, LP joins the publishing company Game Over Books team to pull poems, quotes, brainstorm ideas, and project manage. LP is excited to be back in the world of poetry and writing and to be part of this team. So, yes, this person has done numerous speaking poetry engagements, has been on some of the most competitive slam stages, has competed with their poetry, has done workshops, has also, volunteered their services, has worked with some of my organizations, the DC Scores, being judges for our kids' poetry slam. So they are a very, very involved person, and I'm really excited to hear from them today. So without further ado, before I get into that, hold on, Sherry. Just for those, if this may be your first time watching my segment, this is how things go. So we'll open up the segment. We'll have our feature interviewee come on, do a couple poems for you. Then we're going to go right into the interview. After the interview, for everyone that's listening out here on Facebook and YouTube, that'll be your opportunity to then ask additional questions that are burning or make any comments that you would like to make to show love and support for our feature. And then we'll end with the poem and wrap it up for the night. Now, thank you, Sherry, because I know you cued LP on. Without further ado, I want everyone to make noise again. Go ahead and get those claps going for LP. Pew, pew, pew. All right.
Hey, Aaron? Wait. Before I do my poems, I have to show you my cup, Jerry. This was just for you. It's my Slytherin cup.
Oh, hell yeah. Team Slytherin. Team Slytherin. Everyone out there in Facebook and YouTube, what's your team? If you're a Harry Potter head, what is your team? Tony, what's your team? Hufflepuff. All right, we ain't doing that. Okay.
Tony, one of my best friends is a Hufflepuff.
Said one of her best friends is a Hufflepuff. What the fuck is a Hufflepuff?
Really nice.
At least a Slytherin, you know it's a snake. Slither, it sounds like the animal, but a Hufflepuff is a what? It's none of my business. All right, cool. That's cool.
All right. Poems. right? Isn't that how you want me to start?
That's right. I'm
All
getting
right.
off the screen.
Look at me knowing the agenda and stuff. Okay. So I do a thing at open mics, and I was kind of thinking about tonight, and I wanted to share that with y'all. So what I do is I get 8 random words from anyone that's there, any friend of mine, and when we go to open mics, and have them give me 8 random words, and then I write a poem using those 8 random words. So I'm gonna just read that because I found one and it felt fitting. And also I wanted to read something newer. So this is from June of 2021. I got the words wine, sparkling, menu, Prosecco, white, bottle, red, and signature. And I had to write a poem with them. And this is what I came up with. If you've been lucky enough to know gay love, you know the power of loving despite a world that calls you damaged, a family that mails you a Bible, a parent who just doesn't want life to be harder than it has to be. In a parked car 8 years ago, my first girlfriend and I broke up for the 3rd time. She taught me about Malbec and red blends, about honey jack in my tea to soothe a sore throat. I had a bottle of champagne waiting in the hotel room the night she taught me about strap-ons. She was the first and last to tie me up, the first to unbutton lingerie down my back. My first girlfriend taught me what it feels like to lose a woman I love, the rip and shatter, bed a stranger, the purple sheets burned along with all the queer sex we had and the things we never got to try. I can't ask what she meant when she said, Lissa, you are not the only one who has to live with all your walls. I can only guess at the time she tried to get just one layer deeper and I said, I love you, instead of answering her questions. I've spent years believing that grieving my father had nothing to do with relationships. But didn't I rip and shatter when he left too? I cried myself raw, drank and pilled myself into a hospital, woke up and medicined myself back to a daughter my mother could recognize. My psychiatrist's signature on every prescription reminds me of the depression that sleeps beneath my mania. I am lethal enough without grief. At 18, all my walls were down and he still died, so why would I let them down for you? I thought grieving my father had nothing to do with relationships, but gay love is the only other place I've ever felt safe. So when my next crush calls me out on all my walls, I want to say, the more likely I am to like you, the more likely I am to run away. I recovered the first time I lost safety. Don't ask me to be prepared to recover again. Charity, I think you said you wanted to, but I can't remember. If you hop on here and interrupt me, you're more than welcome to.
Yes, Kim.
You wanted to do another one?
Yes, dos, por favor.
Dos en total.
Gracias. Adios. Pick me up, Sherry.
All right, we're gonna do an older one. Let's see. All right, we're gonna do an older one. So this one I wrote, and I know this is about art and therapy. This is probably the most therapy poem that I've ever written, in that I literally remember it was New Year's, the year that this happened to me, and I was sort of sitting there in my house on the floor in my bedroom, trying to process what had happened to me and kind of losing it. And instead of completely losing it, I sat down and I wrote this poem. My ass is in the air and I've fallen off the toilet. My pants are at my ankles. My palms are flat on the ground. And now I'm sticking my cheek against the tiles because they're cold and I'm nauseous. And if I'm already down here, I might as well take advantage, right? The door is right behind my airborne ass, so naturally, I howl to my roommate for support, doubled up in pain as I am. And when she arrives, I don't know if the tears are from the laughter or the pain or the decision I just made. But here I am, all ass and hands and cramps. The cramps are the only thing I have left from the decision. That and the lower back pain that threatens before driving to the writing retreat that never would have happened. Preparing for the tour that never would have happened, leaving the home I wouldn't be living in the clothes I wouldn't be able to fit in if I made a different decision. 2 days before the bathroom floor when it is too late to cancel the appointment and I was too exhausted to remember all the reasons, I lay swaddled in my roommate's sheets, pacified by the lover on the phone, empty, even before they took it out of me. See, we talk about a woman's right to choose, but we don't talk about how hard that choice will be to make. How you will internalize every protest sign, face the mass of cells and wonder what size fruit they removed while your legs were in the stirrups. Why all the pamphlets say that after, everyone feels so much better. How you know it was never a person, but don't know if you were ever a mother. How there is a difference between being pro-choice and pro your own choice. How you won't tell your family because they would have judged you either way. I talk about rocking myself to sleep, but not about the bed frame splintered in my palm, or how my blood will remind me every month, or that until I have children, if I ever have children, this will be the year I killed the mother in me. Sometimes I imagine her a girl with eyes just like his. But how do you grieve a thing that never existed? How do you grieve?
Wow. Wow. I love that poem. That's probably my second favorite poem. God, I'm always not in frame. Hold on.
What's your first favorite? Oh, I know what it is. I already know. You don't have to tell me.
Yeah, that's my joint right there. The other one's, you know what I'm saying, like that. But that one's really good. I love that one, and it's so timely. With I mean, it's always been timely, but just with everything that's happening right now in the world.
There's something scary about that though too, because I think it's definitely a poem that people could use against what I believe, right? Like I definitely think that anti-abortionist, pro-life people could use that poem and wield that poem, you know?
Yeah.
And I've thought about that a lot before, of how honest it is for me, and also how unfortunate it is that right now I don't know if I would even perform that in like a public way right now, you know, because I would be afraid of that.
Wow. Afraid of like the possible reverse of responses to.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of people coming at me. I've thought about that before, but I would definitely be afraid of people, just twisting it around and using that as a way to say, see, abortion is such a bad thing or whatever. And at the time, like truly, before I got pregnant, before any of that, I was in such an unhealthy mental health state that I basically couldn't leave the house. Like I had so much anxiety in my life at the time. I remember that same friend, this is months before any of this happened. We're trying to leave the house to go do work at a coffee shop because I had so much work that I hadn't gotten done. And I remember standing in my living room with my hands against the wall, literally just unable to move and unable to leave the house. Like there is no way that I could have had a child or safely brought a pregnancy to term in that state, those things are not in the poem, but they're realities of kind of the life I was living at the time.
Wow.
Let me just drop it there. Just get really deep, really fast.
I mean, this is what it's about. We jumping right into it. Let's get it. Now, thank you for sharing that. And that is a very vulnerable piece. You do. I like to say, wear your heart on your sleeve in your poetry a lot. You are very much a vulnerable person. In general, I don't know if you agree with that, but
we can fight about that. We can fight about that. I have a lot of exes who would tell you that I am not vulnerable enough.
I believe them. All right, so let's jump into it. So, how did you first get started writing poetry? What even made you be like, yo, this is something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm going to stick to it?
So when you and I kind of talked about the questions, and in it, because it's more general, it asked, how did you get started doing art? And so I was actually thinking about, while poetry is our conversation here for sure, there are so many art forms that I've leaned into over the years. Singing, I was in a hip hop dance group at one point, writing, obviously, just a lot. So I don't know, I think that singing was actually first, to be honest with you. But then I remembered the first spoken word poem I ever wrote. And I don't know where I got this from, because I don't think I'd ever heard or seen spoken word. I don't know. But I was at nerd camp. You're going to learn a lot about my nerdiness in this interview. But I was at nerd camp. I think I was taking history of mathematics for fun at a sleepaway camp. And I also, during some, I don't know, work, like you got to do other activities. During some writing thing, I wrote a poem about the guy that I had a crush on, that I was like dating, if you want to call it that. I was probably the summer before 6th grade or 7th grade. And I wrote this whole poem, and now it's actually a poem I would never write again, and I would never perform, because I now know so much more about using your art to tell your own story instead of using your art to tell somebody else's story. But the whole poem was kind of about him and his relationship with his parents and what that kind of life looked like and caring about him in that way. And it now would be such a problematic poem. So it's interesting because the way that I started was, you know, I learned lessons even remembering the first thing that I ever wrote when I was so young, which, as I know, you work with youth and we've talked about working with youth, and is why that's so important, because we don't know what we're doing when we first get a pen. Although sometimes youth write better stuff than adults, that's for sure. But yeah, so there was that. And then the second one, and I wish I knew the artist's name because I don't. So remember, I'm a nerd. I also went to speech and debate camp. I was on the speech and debate team in high school, and every night they'd have, you know, different performers of speeches or debates. And speech, there's also acting speech. A lot of people don't know that about that side of it, but they also had a spoken word artist come in. And I remember thinking, a little bit cocky, to be honest with you, in my young self. I remember thinking, A, oh, I know what that is, even though I don't know where I would have known what that was from other than the one poem I'd written years before. And B, oh, I could do that, right? But then also the thing that I had forgotten about until I was reflecting on this, I remember it wasn't even an awe moment or I'm so impressed by that moment. It was just a sense of familiarity with the art form immediately, as if there was some part of me that just finally, after doing all this different art, after, you know, dancing, singing, writing stories, all this other stuff, I saw the thing that would combine acting. I did a lot of acting, would combine kind of that performance and acting theater that I had done with the writing part that I so wanted to do. So in that moment, at, you know, whatever age I was, I think it was 10th summer before 10th grade. I saw an artist and I wish I could remember who it was, and I can't. And then I just kind of knew. And then it was years later when I started. So there's, you know, we have those things in our life that kind of come in and leave and come in and leave. And finally it came back in later and it stuck, but it took a while.
Okay. All right. Well, first question, what is nerd camp?
Okay, so you go to camp.
Step one, you go to camp. All right. What's
well,
step
no,
two?
actually, that's not true. I just didn't want to tell you the first part because it makes it so much worse. So step one is you take a standardized test to get into camp.
See? Okay.
Yeah. So you take the standardized test to get into camp, and then you get into the camp if your test score is high enough.
That is fucking nerd camp. You gotta take a standardized test to get into the camp. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the first part. And then you get to pick. It's actually really cool. So you get to pick. They have all these camps all over the country, and it's on a college campus, and it's 3 weeks, a sleepaway camp for 3 weeks. And so you pick what site you want to go to, what school, and also what courses you want to take. And you pick kind of your favorites. And then they, you know, match you based on kind of what's full, what's not full, whatever. And so for whatever reason, the first class that I picked was history of mathematics. So I went and learned the history of math for 3 weeks of overnight camp. Then I did other things. I did, you know, the elements of drama. I did writing in the imagination. I did stuff that sounds cooler. But yeah, that's nerd camp. Now, here's the best part though. I later found out from an ex of mine that read an article, who also went to the camp, read an article that the whole point of the camp was actually to give nerdy kids social skills. And that's why it was created, was so that all the nerds could go chill with each other and get social. And I did end up with my first boyfriend from nerd camp. So, you know, there's that.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. Nerd camp. Gotta love it. All right, let's keep it moving. So the next question I have is your first open mic. The first time you ever got on stage and performed. What was that like? So walk us through that.
I'm 32 years old. You think I remember what the first one? I know, I'm kidding. I'll go back to the first one. Oh God, this is true though. I swear I'm not making this up. It was probably at church camp. And I'm not lying. It was a church camp. Not the first slam. I know about the first slam, but the first open mic was probably a church camp.
Okay.
Yeah. The first slam, however, and I know my friend Amanda's watching this because I told her she had to and she loves me, but we were at Landmark College, which is a school for all students with learning disabilities. And they did a poetry slam. And so I competed and I won the poetry slam. And then that was, I think, what kicked off sort of this idea of kind of reminding myself that I could write poems and stuff. I think that might not have been the first. That was the first slam. Yeah, that was the first slam that I ever did.
Okay, cool. Church camp, nerd camp, church camp.
I thought we were just gonna skate by. That's why I told the other story. So we would just skate by the church camp part.
Well, the church camp. I'm curious. What was this? Was it a holy, like a religious poem that you did at that camp?
Hell no, probably some love poem or something.
Okay.
I don't know. Most likely. I got my heart broken at all these camps, to be clear.
Okay. All right. We're getting somewhere with this interview.
Your facial expressions.
Like, God dang. Nerd camp and church camp. All right, let's keep it moving.
Oh, there's Amanda saying hi.
Hey, what's up, Amanda? What's good? Okay. All right. Nerd camp, church camp. So you've had different camps to be a part of, different communities, and I think that's important, right? Having different communities to support you, to try your talents out in front of, which I think is really awesome. So you said something earlier about telling your own story versus telling other stories versus telling your own stories. And you said that you learned somewhere throughout your career the difference in why you should tell your own story. Why do you feel like people should tell their own stories?
I mean, one, your story is the only story you know, truly. And I think it's so easy to project ourselves onto other people's stories. So, people will want to write about someone else who was assaulted or someone else who went through something hard or, and I think when we do that, we always insert our own pain into their journey. We can't help it because we are the ones writing, and B, I think we can, this might sound dramatic, but in some ways it strips the ability of, I'll talk about my own story actually as I talk about this. So I've heard sometimes men will do poems about women in trying to, have solidarity or support women. And I think it's tough because I'm not saying that men can never talk about women in their poems, but specifically around kind of the struggle of being a woman or how men should treat women or how men can be so terrible to women. And I'm not saying that can never be addressed, but I think it's a really fine line. And I know that I've definitely felt before sometimes when watching a poem that whatever man it was performing was sort of taking away my own voice and my own power to say that for myself, right? It kind of felt as though someone else was trying to talk for me as if I wasn't going to have the ability to speak for myself. And it's not like there are no women talking about what we go through in poems, right? There are plenty. So I think that is a big piece of it is you can kind of strip someone else from being able to speak that story. And there's a lot more, but and it's often done. I think the thing that's hard is it's often done well-intentioned. I don't think I've ever seen anyone tell someone else's story in a way where out of malice at all. The other problem though is if you're competing with it or if you're getting paid to do it, right? Now you're telling someone else's story and you're profiting off of that story. So that's a whole other piece of it. So there's just a lot of layers to that whole thing.
Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying and going into that because I think that is an important thing that I definitely see happening in the poetry community. People, whether it's men or whether it's people speaking on a specific experience, not even with gender, like just based off of certain experiences, what people go through. And
People do it a lot.
I've seen that.
And I've done it. To be clear, I have a poem online that I'm still trying to get taken offline that I wouldn't write again. So I've done it. I've been guilty of it for sure. I was writing about the experiences of students that I was teaching after the Boston Marathon bombing, and they also all wrote in my class. I didn't need to tell their story for them, So I think it's a mistake that people can make. The question is, do you learn from it and course correct after it,
Interesting. That's a really cool way. That's a very valuable point that you're making because I do think that as time changes, as the world shifts, as things become less tolerated and people are, holding folks accountable for things, it's important for people as artists to understand that shift, and people can make that change. It's a personal decision whether you're going to say, all right, I'm gonna do that problematic poem that I did 10 years ago today still, or am I going to actually grow as an artist and, try to shift and change my artistry as the world. Not saying you have to change as a person, but also like learn from it. But I do think that step one is understanding like, yo, that poem I wrote was not okay. Because we're artists, we're very sensitive about our shit, and I can see how it's very easy to be like, you know what, that's my shit, I wrote it, I felt that, I meant that, I wouldn't change shit about it, right? And I'm still gonna perform it. That by all means is your prerogative. You can do that. That's all up to you. However, times are different. So if you do get somebody in the middle of your open mic saying, hey, that's some bullshit, what the fuck? Or people are like, yo, I'm not supporting you no more because this is against what's going on with my life. It's all about choices, I think. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
And I think the thing that you said around, I think it kind of does indicate that you need to change as a person a little bit. I think, and you had brought up this question about how much of your art are you writing for yourself, writing for other people? How much should people be? It was a really well-phrased question. I don't remember what it was about. Kind of.
We'll get to it, but if you want to answer it now, go ahead.
No, I don't. I just wanted to say, I kind of think that if you do write something that's problematic or somebody calls you on it, there might be some things that you do need to change on a deeper level than just your writing. I think it's too easy to say, oh, hey, I wrote this problematic poem about my students and tried to tell their story, and then not reflect on, okay, also, what are you bringing into the classroom if you feel like you have the power to kind of take that voice and tell their story for them? Are you listening when they're already telling that story? What's going on there as an educator? So I do think that if somebody calls you out on your art, it's hard, right? Because you spent a lot of time on it and you might need to just put it down and never perform it again. I have another poem like that. And B, I don't know. I think it's easy to not check ourselves, and I think we should.
Word. Okay. All right, let's keep it moving. We could unpack that for the rest of this interview. So I'm gonna try to get.
I feel like there's a lot of things we could just start and then never finish.
Yeah, seriously though. Okay, so I'm pretty sure as you started to get involved in the spoken word slam space, or even before that, like just reading, who are some artists that inspired you or moved you early on in your craft, and why?
So there's inspired me to be an artist full time, and there's inspired me to slam, and there's a lot of ways you can get inspired. And I think I've decided after reflecting on this answer that I'm going to start asking people that, who's the one who inspired you in this way? Who's the one who inspired you in that way? So the person who inspired me to be an artist full time is named Jared Paul. He is not only a really amazing performer and writer, but a really, really amazing workshop facilitator. And he also helped create and was a huge mentor in the Providence Youth Poetry Slam team. So also really encouraging in terms of doing youth work. So his whole career was built around and is built around kind of workshops and teaching and writing and performing. Not as much now, but definitely, when I first met him. And he was a mentor to two people that I knew when I was younger as well. So I think that he was someone who was doing it full time, who I knew, and that was where I got the inspiration to do it full time or to try that. And then he founded a business, which we ended up co-founding together. And so that kind of took me on that whole journey. But in terms of inspired me to slam, that would be Portia Olayiwola and Janae Johnson, two artists that you know very, very well.
Yes. Ayo, shout out Portia O. I stand Portia O. If you don't know Portia O, you go fucking Google them right now. Portia O and Janae Johnson. Oh my goodness. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
So I was in Flatline Poetry, a collective. We were already performing. We were already doing shows. I'm about to ask you what your favorite Portia O poem is, so just be ready.
Oh my which one? But all right, go ahead.
So I was already performing, right? I was already kind of doing the thing. And Flatline had sort of talked about, well, are any of us going to slam? Because none of us had ever been on the slam scene, which is sort of, for a lot of people, the reverse order of doing this. And they kind of all looked at me and said, you're the most likely one to slam for whatever reason. And I wasn't sure. And then Janae asked me if I was going out for the team. And I respected Janae so much. And I should say, I started watching Janae and Portia at a time in my life where I was coming screaming out the closet, as my friend Amber and I like to say. And so there was just scream, just out. The real thing is that I was already out. I had been for like my whole life, but this was my first pride. It was everything. My first poem about being gay is what got me my first girlfriend, to be clear. She never would have talked to me if I did not write and perform that poem.
Yo, poetry be bagging folks though.
Then you have to make sure that they like you for you and not the person that's on stage, though, which is also real.
Big
Any
facts.
poets
Big
and
facts.
performers that think about it and watch stuff, people will fall for your stage presence, and
That's a whole word. That's a whole word. Yeah.
Anyway, so they both asked me if I was going to slam, and I wasn't going to, and then I did. It makes me emotional. I don't know why. I remember. Oh my God, I do know why. I remember leaving one of the slams and crying on the street. And I don't even remember what poem it was, but it was just, I was just going through a lot in my life and still deciding to slam and just, So anyway, they encouraged me to slam, and their poems are amazing, and their stage presence is really amazing. So both of them. And then Jean Verlee is someone who I've been reading who inspires me a lot to think about writing in terms of bipolar disorder and mental health. Who was I thinking about today? There were a couple. Mahogany L. Brown has a poem. Has a poem in her book that I just go to and reread a lot. That's about like a cul-de-sac, basically. And I'm just sitting here naming artists that I've worked with, which is another thing that other than Jean Verlee, which is something that I reflect on, is that I've just had the opportunity to work with some amazing people and in my life. And so they were inspiring me. I mean, I was in Boston at a time where Boston was just churning out, world slam champions and just so many impressive poets. So I was learning under these amazing, impressive poets. But the reason that I first performed, or that I knew about poetry, I guess, at that speech and debate camp around the same time, my friend Aaron Samuels, who just released it's a video poem it's really beautiful. I'll plug it at the end. But anyway, he was doing slam, and he was doing it with his friend Lewis Morris, and I saw them perform in DC. So there's just a lot of threads, and it's mostly people that I've been around. Now, I will say, since we're talking about people that I've known, Amin Drula, who you also know,
Matrix killer.
So Jean Verlee inspired me to talk about, mental health, and I'm working on that. My friend Kaylee, I think, has inspired me to be super vulnerable in poetry. They take that to a whole other level. I mean, there's just inspiration all around. But Amin is so funny in his poems. When you think about it, he's so funny, and I can't do it. I can't get there. So there's also, I just want to so bad, and I'll see him perform, and I've performed with him many times. And he's so funny. And I really want to have a poem that's funny at some point in my life. Please give me a funny poem, Lord. But I haven't figured that out yet. So those are my inspirational poets, and the fact that I wish I was funny.
That's what's up. I definitely recognize a lot of those folks that you said, and I can personally vouch that all of those are extremely inspirational folks. So yeah, I can see how you got your influences from them for sure. So how has poetry allowed you to explore your different identities?
I mean, it literally gave me my first girlfriend. We just talked about that.
Got that.
No. So that same summer, so I always say about writing, if you really let yourself write, and there's a really good writing exercise for this, which I'll share with you if you ever want it. Just free writing. It's pretty simple. My friend Lewis Morris used to do it with us. But if you're writing, you can find what you think, kind of what your subconscious is thinking, without needing to. So if you just let yourself write without judgment, without thinking, just kind of flowing on the page, you'll come out with shit and sit there and look at your page and think, damn, I did not know I felt that way. Fuck. And then you have to grapple with some shit, and it's right there in front of you. And you can pretend you didn't write it, but it's there and it's in your
wrote
it. So you can't fight it, right? But anyway, so that same summer, I had this poem called Fingers, which is about sleeping with women, but it's also about how painful it is to love women and how much more complicated it was for me to love women. And then I wrote a poem that same summer where I ended up hanging out with this guy. And after he left, I wrote this poem. And the end of the poem is I roll over, reaching for the phone. I dial her number, reaching for what I really want after doing what was really easy.
Oh.
Yeah, reaching for what I really want calling this woman. After doing what was really easy, this man literally just left my apartment.
Ooh.
So
That's pretty savage.
At that point, I just sat there, sort of, and my identity is going to be complicated for the rest of my life. I date all genders, and I still believe that I am down to date all genders. But in that moment, it was very clear that I really had no business dating men, or that I was using men to kind of avoid dealing with some parts of my sexuality or the heartbreak that I was going through or whatever. And also the fact that being with men had been easy for me in my life because it was all I knew, right? That was my whole identity, was knowing that I wanted to date women. I lived most of my life knowing I wanted to date women and ending up dating men. Every time I got single, I would talk to, especially my friend Sarah, who's also queer, and say, I really think I need to date women. And then what? A week later, I'm calling her about some guy that I'm dating. Every time. So writing just kind of always tells me subconsciously what I'm thinking. It's allowed me to live in that queer identity. And I will also say, because you called me vulnerable and I'm working on it, there's a lot of stuff that I'm still unpacking about my identity. There's stuff that I've written this summer that I've looked at on the page and felt scared of, felt not ready to talk about, felt nervous to perform about. And so I think I'm still kind of piecing together and grappling with identity, specifically around gender stuff and around the different worlds that I live in. One, which is art, where it's kind of not a big deal at all. And another, which is more corporate and more, just harder to explain. So I'm still having those moments where I write something down and I look at it and it's just like, fuck, well, there's another identity that I'm thinking about. So, there it is.
Word. Okay. That's interesting because it's like, I think identity is very complex. It's not something that is just like a straight up black and white answer. And so I think as you unpack it through your poetry or through your art, the answers aren't always going to be just clean cut, So
I have a question though, too, because one other thing I was thinking about is that, right, you just gave me that look like, aren't I interviewing?
I'm the interviewer, but go ahead. What's up?
Because I was thinking about this question, and I think the other way that writing has helped me navigate my identities is that it's given me communities that share those identities, right? If I write about having lost my dad, somebody else that's lost a parent is going to talk to me about that. If I write about being queer, if I write about having a learning disability, right? Any of those things. So yeah, it's the writing part, but it's also all the people that I've met, the communities that I've met, because they knew that we were a part of the same community. If it's something invisible, they don't necessarily know,
That's true.
I'm wondering if you agree with that, or if you find that you found communities through your art as well.
Absolutely, 100%. I never thought about that. That's so true. I think that, as you're saying this, identity is something that people think is very physical, like, just how you look, how you identify. If they look at me, I mean, I'm pretty presenting as to who I am.
I was so funny. How's Jane about to describe herself? What do people?
But there's so many layers, and so when you do poetry, when I do poems about losing my parents, or exploring my identity, or just my own struggles, being a Black woman in this world, whatever it may be, the reactions that I get from other folks that have those same shared experiences help me. Yeah, that does definitely help me explore my identity, because I feel that connection, and I create relationships through that, community through that. And I think that if I did not have poetry and have that platform to share those different identities, experiences through, I would not have that ability to connect with those folks. And so I do think I think there is a flip side to that. That I would say yes to your question, but this is your interview, so let's keep these questions going for you. But yeah, that's a great one. I might add that to my list of questions here. All right, so cool. Let's get through, because we're not even halfway through. So
you don't have to ask all the questions.
I know, but I got some more I really want to get to.
Favorites.
All right, let's see. All right, cool. Navigating identities. Okay, so cool. I like this question, and I feel like people interpret it so many different ways. So I'm always like asking it. Can you share a time that you feel like art has saved you?
Damn, I was hoping you'd skip this one. Cause
ask your favorite one. Damn, I hope you skip this one. All right, go ahead.
Because my answer is sort of a cop-out, honestly. You can tell me if you think my answer is a cop-out, okay?
All right.
But I might get emotional, and so then you're gonna be like, well, I can't tell you it's a cop-out because you just got emotional.
All right.
So I'm thinking for a minute, if we think about literally saved, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't this is so cheesy, but I was thinking about how we don't always know when we're saved from something, right? You know if something terrible happens to you, but you don't know if something terrible was about to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
So in a kind of, okay, listen, we're going too far away, right? If I walked out of my house tonight, I could get hit by a car or I could not. And if I didn't, I wouldn't know that being on this interview saved me from going and getting hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the weird place that my brain went to. But on a personal level, there are so many times that I was at poetry events where I just wonder where else I would have been, right? So I found a poetry community and did not find a community where I was so much stuff. So I, in addition to having manic episodes, which I talk about a lot in my art and when I talk to people, I also have had a few suicide attempts that I don't talk about a lot and I don't put in my art. And I think a lot around, are there times in my life where I would have been suicidal again or where I would have been super depressed again? When I moved back to DC, I moved back and I was not doing well. I moved back into my mother's house at 20 something because I was not doing well. And I ended up finding poets in DC, finding the DC Slam team, being on the DC Slam team. So I can't sit here and tell you, I would have hurt myself if I hadn't found them, but I can say that I wasn't doing well when I found them, So I guess, and I think the reason why that answer is sort of important to me is because funders will ask that all the time, right? Funders, I mean, you know this, you work in arts, right? In a nonprofit of, well, why art, right? Why is this important, especially with young people? And I just want to kind of shake people and be like, you don't even know the number of times that if I had been alone, who knows? Who fucking knows, So I don't know the moment, but I guarantee you there are probably a lot where I could have gotten hit by the metaphorical car and didn't. So that's my non-answer.
That's not a cop-out.
Okay, good.
That's a good answer. I mean, that's not a good answer. That's an answer. Okay. So it's not a cop-out. I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I wonder that a lot too. Different, when I first lost my mother, when I lost both my parents, my mother was hard, but then we lost both my parents. And I found myself at actually our last feature, MJG Speaks, spoken word poetry. And I don't know, like I just happened to I was like, man, I just need to get out. I just need to go do something. I remember finding that open mic and I'm like, all right, let me go in there. And it was like cool. It's like a little in the cut, little free joint, you know what I'm saying? In a black owned mom and pop's business type place, not that far from me. And I just remember being in there and all the poems, I don't know if it was just like just by coincidence, but everything that everyone in that space, I didn't even spit, like I was just there, but everything that every person that got up and spit that night was like, damn, I'm not alone, like I'm not crazy, I feel seen. And just those things, like people think a lot about the performance part as a performer, but I could just think of how many times not performing, just listening to other folks, how that has just been so impactful and has had me thinking like, damn, if I didn't come here tonight, where would my mind be racing right now? So yeah, I definitely feel you on that shit, yo.
You just reminded me when you were talking about that of something. I was at a queer weekend up in P-Town and probably that same summer. And there was someone who got up and performed and talked about church and their relationship with church after coming out and how complicated that was. And Portia actually had a poem, and I don't think it's online anywhere, but basically about how open mics are like church for us in some way. And so I guess I sort of think, church does save people, and I know that people are really moved by religion. I just also believe that open mics can be your form of church or, spiritual experience as well. And I know that it's helped people who maybe didn't have a place to go every Sunday, but had a place to go every Friday, and find that community.
Absolutely. I think that was my source of community at that time. Unfortunately, MJ had to stop that for whatever reasons, but Every 2 weeks, that place I knew I could go was safe. It was welcoming. And MJ is like a freestyle poet. So they just get up and
Nice.
just be on the spot doing whatever. I'm like, did you like go through my text messages before you got up here or something? Or like, did you just read through my diary? Because I feel like everything you're spitting right now is like my entire life. But yeah, it's
people channel shit in the room. That's a real
I'm a firm believer in that.
It is not. It is real. It is real.
Energy just came through her. So cool. All right. Good answer. Let's keep it moving. All right.
Am I being graded? Are we? Is there a scale here?
This is great. Well, you asked me like if the answer was gonna be a cop out, but no, it's good. So next question: has someone ever told you that your poetry has touched them or has deeply moved them? And I'm pretty sure that's happened. But your top moment that does ever happen, how did that make you feel?
I started nodding before you finished the question. Not because it was one of the moments that inspired me to keep going with the open mic that I ran in college. So not only did that happen to me, it also just pushed me to keep going. I have a poem that I don't perform anymore. It's old. It's the first poem in that TEDx talk that y'all actually posted, but it is about my dad dying. And someone came up to me and she said, oh, like, how did you do that or whatever? And at first I thought that she was, talking about writing about my dad dying or performing or something like that. And then I kind of was like, well, maybe she's talking about, losing my dad. But she very literally said, no, how did you get through it? And then told me that she was in school and her mom was sick. And my dad was sick for 2.5 years while I was starting out college. And she was starting out her college career at Wheelock. And so she just was literally asking me, how do I get through it in this moment and I just flashed back to me at that time when I was starting college, when my dad was sick, when we knew he was probably dying and I was trying to be away from home and do college. So for me, that was, we stopped and we talked briefly, but she kind of had this moment of seeing me on sort of the other side of it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if I had been able to see somebody on the other side of it when my dad died, it would have, if I had been going to open mics at the time, if I could see people that had gotten through that grief, I don't think I would have been as consumed in being so stuck in the grief that I was in,
Word, for sure. Definitely know that. And I don't know if is Lissa freezing for y'all.
Am I freezing?
You are stuck like you're stuck like this.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but now you're gone. Oh, you back. She back. All right, cool. Word. Yeah, no, absolutely understand. I feel that. And no freeze happening over here. Okay, well, I guess it's just me. All right. Well, you're back. So, yeah, like having someone come up to you and share that and yeah, I feel that a lot because it's like when you get through something and then it's like now I'm that person that I wish I had. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm that person that I can actually be that void that I wish someone else could feel in that time. Like I find myself in that space a lot now too, like feeling like the trailblazer in a way in some of this grief that I'm going through because it's such a, it's not an uncommon thing to lose your parents at a younger age, but it can feel polarizing. Mm-hmm. It can feel like you are alone. And so when you do come across folks that are going through it, it does feel like, paying it forward in a way of letting them know, yeah, I've been there. I know what you're feeling right now. Shit is fucked up. It's fucked up, but you're never going to be okay, but you'll definitely find ways to push through it. So definitely relate to that. Now go ahead.
I think that's sort of the dangerous thing though too about, right? If we're using poetry or performing or writing as a form of healing for ourselves, and we write things when we are still in process of healing, And whether you want to or not, when you get on a stage and when you get behind a microphone, someone in that room is looking to you as an expert on whatever you're talking about, right? Doesn't matter if you think you're an expert. So if you're still processing that, and that can be super dangerous. I had a poem about sexual assault that I wrote, and then it became a duo poem with a friend, with Kaylee, who I perform with. And looking back, it was too raw. It was too graphic. It was too traumatizing. It was also what I needed to write at the time. I needed to write it. I needed to read it. I needed to break down crying when I read it. But doing it on an open mic, I think, was a little bit too raw. I don't think that it was necessarily, and I think that it could have been edited at some point. Once I was more healed, it could have been edited. But there's a thing, especially when you're competing in slam, and then especially with young people, where, I had literally this horrible thing happened to me, and I immediately knew that I was going to write about it. And I honestly immediately knew that I was going to end up slamming about it. So it just was, and it happened so fast, right? So I think that, I just think it's also, so what then can we perform? Can we perform shit that we're still going through and we're imperfect and we don't know what we're doing? Do we have to perform things that we're experts on, or that we're people that are on the other side of it, right? Is it different at an open mic versus at a slam versus at a paid show? Because I think those are different things. But once you do get paid to do it, or you are a professional artist, it doesn't really matter if you're just at an open mic. People see you a certain way whenever you get up there. I've been doing poetry for years, but certain people know me from certain times of my life. So there's also just this thing around, people think you're an expert, and that you just hold that responsibly, I think.
Well, aren't you an expert in your experience, though?
Yeah, I'm not always an expert, though. For example, mental health is something we talk about a lot. Suicidality is something we talk about a lot. I have never, and this is just me, I have never performed a poem about mental health, suicide, for example, when I was still in a dangerous place. But I know that could be a thing. And if writing and performing is healing, then it's healing. That's tough. If somebody writes a poem about being suicidal and they are still in that moment suicidal, and someone comes up to them that's going through it, they might not be in the best place to be a support for that person that's going through it in that moment, right? So I think that's it, but it's a dance because it's an open mic, and I'm not necessarily saying that I'm an expert. So I'm curious everybody's thoughts on that. I'm going to start asking people that.
I'm curious too.
To be experts on our shit, like what's the line? How soon after something happens can I then perform about it? How healed do I need to be in order to perform about this shit?
I mean, it's a really good question. It has me thinking, because I remember I was taking mental health response training for DC Scores, and the guy was saying, and the guy was saying, you have to be mentally ready to do these types of trainings and to hold those certain spaces, because if you are going through certain things in your life, that grief and that trauma can then pour into sorry, my sister's cat just ran across, y'all. I have 3 coworkers with me, so you see somebody fly across and knock some shit over, that's them.
I have a cat here too right now. I'm cat sitting.
Oh, right. Fur babies. So
that is not my baby, let's be clear.
And so what was I saying? Oh yeah, he made this really interesting statement saying that he's hired folks before that he's had to unfortunately say, hey, you need some time to heal before doing this or teaching this, because you're not in a space to have these conversations, because you can't be up here talking to kids about mental health and how to hold the space and then breaking down, crying in front of everybody, and then snot nosing, and then running out the room, and not saying that that's not where you are in your healing journey, which is you're very much so validated in that, right? Like if that's how you're feeling, but also how's that impacting that space in that moment? How's that triggering? Because it's already triggering in a way to some folks. So I don't have the answer. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, in social work school. So my bachelor's degree is in social work, and when I was studying social work, there was an exercise we had to do our senior year, which was basically we had to look and unpack what are your biases and what are your issues that you have, because you need to know what kinds of clients you can't work with. If you have certain, if you've been sexually assaulted in your recent life and you are still working with that, you might not be the right therapist for somebody who was just assaulted, right? And I didn't become a social worker, and I am not a therapist, so I don't want to say how people should or shouldn't do their jobs at all. All I'm saying is that I think it speaks to what you're saying. And the thing that I really thought was important about that, though, was that in school they gave us time to think about what are your things, because everybody has them. So check yourself. What should you not be teaching about or supporting on, or what do you still need healing from? Because, you know, everybody has it. There's something for everyone.
You're right. We're getting some really good stuff in the chat from Collins saying, I feel like once we as artists are in a safer space with whatever ails us, then performing a piece about your experience can help you heal. It's helped me heal. I love that.
Sure.
Asha said there's a power to giving voice to rawness too, if a poet can handle it. I absolutely
agree.
Yeah.
And that's what's so hard. It's such a dance. But
it is a dance. It's not. That's a tricky one.
I will say it's also not to put too much on hosts, right? But when you think about being at an event and being in a space, a host also has a lot to do with holding that space, because I think that the way that a host talks about a poem or poet before and after that piece can set the tone for what that is a little bit. And also people will come up to the host for support, you know, if they're emotional or if something problematic. So yes, read the room for sure.
Yo, and read the performers. Come on, yo. Like, I've seen hosts after a person just got out there and spilled their guts out on the stage and be like, on some like, all right, y'all, woo, give it up. Wasn't that did you even listen to their poem? Wow, that was great. I just talked about my grandma that passed, sir. You know, like it's you know, I agree. I do think how that space is held, what boundaries and norms are set in that space are extremely important. But I still don't have an answer. I'm stumped. I gotta dig into that a little more.
How healed do I need to be? And maybe not at all. I mean, the person who said in the chat that performing like raw can be really beautiful. That's so true too. So anyway, food for thought.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes we're not gonna have all the answers, y'all. And isn't that
I like control. I like boxes. I like having all the answers. I don't do well. I don't do well with that.
That's how it is, though. That's how
I think
it is.
It's a Capricorn. I'm pretty sure that's a Capricorn thing. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is.
It might. I think it is because Tony's a Capricorn.
I forgot Tony.
Tony's a solid fucking Capricorn. You look up Capricorn. Look up basic traits of Capricorn.
Don't call me
and right next to you see a picture of Tony like this.
Tony, don't call me basic.
not true.
Right next to it. But raw but not bleeding. Yes, Asha.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you,
yes.
Asha. I'm literally writing that down in my notebook.
Raw but not bleeding. Damn. Put that on a t-shirt. Yeah. All right, cool.
Make that t-shirt. I want one.
Asha. Yo, real shit though.
But seriously, make that t-shirt and then I want one.
So here's another question for you.
Oh, damn. Okay, I'm ready.
We just thought we was done. We got some time. Not a lot, but some time. Because I do want to leave some time for folks to ask you questions. So how much of your poetry do you create for yourself? If you do. It's another question I like to ask because I get a lot of interesting answers. How much poetry do you create for yourself? And how much do you create for others? And or both?
I journal for myself. And I don't think we talk about journaling a lot, at least not in the performance spaces that I'm in. And I have a lot of thoughts around that. If anybody ever wants to talk about journaling. I don't know. It's kind of always about me first, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It has to be, I think, because if it's not, I've caught myself writing lines that were for points or for a reaction. I guess I would say that everything I write for me, but when I perform, I don't perform for myself anymore. When I perform, I have this thing that I say to young people when they perform and they get nervous. This thing I say about nerves, which is just there's someone out in the room, in the audience, in the virtual viewership that needs to hear what it is that you're about to say. I don't know who it is. I don't know if they're going to talk to you after, and you might never know, but there is someone that needs to hear something that you're saying tonight.
Word.
I totally get why you're nervous. I totally get all of those things. Just know that that's there, you know? So I think I write for me and I perform for other people most of the time now, but not always. I mean, like Asha said, you know, it can be healing. So I think that there's that. And I think someone else said that as well. I will say, though, that when I was slamming, honestly, it was never for me, really looking back on it. It was for the slam team. It was for the points. It was for, you know, parts of it maybe were for me, but whatever was for me was kind of taken out of it a little bit when I was trying to slam.
I say that all the time. Write for you, perform for them. Yes. That's from a slam champ right there. Danielle Reed. They know what's up. That's real. Like, I don't know. So it's interesting because I feel like now I'm in a space where I write for others because I get paid to write for others. Like if someone's
are your poems right? Are they better or worse than the ones you normally write on your own?
I gotta be honest. The ones that I write for myself are better.
Yes,
I
the ones that I'm paid to write are cheesy. They're not as good.
The ones I get paid to write, I'm probably doing some research, probably looking up somebody I don't know shit about. And it's for the money. So I do think that you have your talent. If you're good at it and you're just using your talent to, you know, pay bills or whatever, that's one thing. And I even do think that there's a fine line with that, because when I'm picking things to write to get paid for, like I just can't pick any and everything. I remember someone asked me to write about breastfeeding or some shit, and I'm like, girl, I
talk about not telling your own story. I know this. I know you don't have kids.
I ain't breastfeed one, not nan kid in my life. I don't know what the fuck. I don't even know where to start. Like, pop it out, get it on. Like, I just don't know what the fuck to say. Did you recommend
another poet for the gig?
Actually, you know what? I didn't. I honestly, and looking back, I probably should have. Like, when it happened, I said, nah.
This is the thing I always say to artists that get paid for what they do. Having been a manager of artists, once you have a platform and you're getting offered gigs, it's no longer about, is this gig, am I going to take this gig? In my mind, it becomes about, once you hit a certain spot, it becomes about, am I going to take this gig? Or the way I think about it is, or is there somebody else that should take this gig, right?
For sure.
So young men that we're teaching about sexual assault on college campuses that had never been assaulted a day in their lives, you know, plenty of poets that could have taken that gig, you know?
Yeah.
And then also, so don't just turn something down.
Well, that's a good point, because I try not to be, because it's the selfish thing would be like, well, let me just force this and just write some shit about, let me look up some breastfeeding shit and be like, yeah, no infamil.
I don't know if we'd be friends.
Get the titties out and make you feel or whatever. I'm not gonna do no shit like that. I can't.
I would be like, nope, we're good.
Tony, you're like that. No infamil. Pop them titties out and make it drill. Ew. Still, no, okay. I would have not got paid.
Say you were not going what you're not going to do, and then you just sat there and did it in that moment.
I'm saying I could have like really like done some dumb shit like that, and I've seen it happen. I've seen people like force shit, and I'm like, this sounds like you don't know what the fuck you're really talking about. But I do think like when I am offered things where I'm like, okay, write an inspirational poem about like I recently did one for Toni Stone. I didn't know nothing about Toni Stone. I didn't know she was the first Black female baseball player. And I was like, but they're talk about resilience, talk about how it feels to be, you know, a trailblazer, first person to do something. I'm like, okay, I can relate to that. I've been the first of many things. And so if I'm able to somewhat relate, I feel comfortable then going into it and doing it. But then if there's like something completely, I have no business writing about this shit, I would pass it up. But now talking to you, I need to be more like, nah, but Simply Sherry might do breast milk or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Simply, I ain't putting you out there. I'm just saying. But, you know, you know what I'm saying? Like, I should have been more, I will think more proactively about that moving forward.
Not to tell you how to live your life or anything.
Oh, why y'all highlight that shit?
Lines from Charity's fake poem sitting in the chat. We like it.
Oh shit. But no, But yeah, that's journaling is so important. I need to get back into journaling.
I'm actually about to start a kind of journaling process myself, and I just did a workshop at a conference and told all the people there that if they wanted accountability around journaling while I'm doing it, they can just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to support. So if anybody wants to join kind of an accountability space around journaling and just wants an email reminder and some prompts and stuff, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to put you on that list.
That's what's up. And you do a lot of different writing services, but we'll talk a little bit about that at the end and offer those up. But yeah, for sure. All right, I got 2 more questions, and I'm gonna open up the floor for folks. So folks, if you're really fucking with this interview and you're like, damn, like I gotta ask Lissa something, drop it in the chat. We'll make sure that we ask Lissa all your questions.
Questions. Charity's questions suck. No, I'm kidding.
I'm gonna finish that poem. # Formless breastfeeder. Let's go. Make that poem. I need it in my life because I don't know. But I know it's there. Okay. All right.
Can you put my email in the chat? I'll text it.
We're on it. Okay. All right. This is one of my favorite questions. Everybody knows my favorite.
I'm probably gonna hate it. Here we go.
Well, have you ever seen a documentary, Jim and Andy?
No. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. What was
all right. Yeah. So Jim Carrey has this really dope documentary called Jim and Andy. It's about his experience as a method actor doing the movie Man on the Moon. So if you know anything about method acting, is a person that, literally on stage, on set, off camera, they are in character. And so this is something he did with all his movies, but particularly with this character, he was a nuisance on and off set, because the character he was playing was essentially a nuisance. So like Jim Carrey didn't drink, he didn't smoke, but he found himself drinking, smoking, doing all the shit that the character did. It was a really interesting look into his process for acting. So in this documentary, he said something pretty profound that I thought was interesting. He said, at some point when you create yourself to make it, you're going to either have to let that creation go and take a chance at being loved or hated for who you really are. Or you're going to have to kill who you really are and fall into your grave, grasping for a character you never were. Some artists will say that their art is a true reflection of themselves. How important do you think it is for artists to be transparent to their audience? If you think it is important or not, we're interested. What's up?
I think having managed some artists, people make different choices. One choice that I think a lot of people make is to draw the line at other people in their lives. So if you follow certain people, they might mention if they're in a relationship or not, but oftentimes they won't necessarily have their partner on their social media. Just kind of as one example of things that I've seen in terms of choices about bringing your whole self or not, or whatever those choices are. So when I read this question, I immediately thought about other people, not about myself. In terms of, I don't know, if you're going to be in my life, you're probably at some point going to be written about. And for my friends, it's all great things. And for anybody else, it's often not. I don't. So I think that when you ask for a writer that performs about our lives and telling our own stories, we can ask how honest and vulnerable and how much of yourself should you bring to your art form. The thing about it is it's also how much of other people are you allowed to bring in, and what is that? Mm-hmm. So I think about that a lot. I had someone not date me, I think in part because of that, but that's a different story. So I think, I guess but that thing about kind of being someone that you're not, and then choosing to either get rid of that or not get rid of that, it's tough. There have been a lot of moments where I stopped writing for 2 years while I was in a relationship that wasn't really feeding me spiritually. And when I came back, there was a virtual open mic that I came to, and people recognized me and stuff. And I just realized that the person that they recognized was not at all who I felt I was, right? That's someone who was writing new material. They recognized someone who's performing. And I think, so there's the choice to be the person that you are as a performer. There's the choice to just be yourself fully. And then there's also this thing that happens when the person that people know used to be true, but is no longer true. And so then do you jump back into a thing that was a real thing? It was you for sure. Or do you show up as this other thing that isn't going to meet what they thought it was, but it was still you? So I think that's also, it's navigating kind of all of the versions of yourself, and how much of that do you show up with or not?
That's a really good point, because I do think that like your poetry shows your growth. I look at some of the shit that I wrote back in the day. I was like, God damn, I was going through some shit and I needed to write the shit out, or I was hella naive about some stuff, or I was super judgmental about some things.
Break out the first poems from Charity.
Oof, they were rough, but that was a part of me. And I could also attest to the what you're saying about who you are on stage. Like, I think when people see on stage Charity Blackwell, they think like, oh, that's hype, that's Charity all day, every day. But when you see me at home kicking it, playing my video games, petting my fur babies, like, I'm so opposite. I'm like a true introvert, and I think sometimes people fall in love with that stage person, but then they get to know you, kind of like what you're talking about with your poem that got your first girlfriend. They really fuck with that poem. Now maybe that poem was like, yeah, like this is a part of me, who I really am, but also there's so many other layers to who you are, and that person who you are on stage is essentially a version of you, but also there's more to you than just what you see up there on the lights and the mic and all that good stuff.
I'll say about that whole creating and projecting someone that is not you, though, that poem's a good example. She wouldn't have dated me in part because the poem made it sound like I was queer as fuck and had been queer for years. After buying me a drink, having heard
heard that poem, and it does sound like you've been out there doing, things.
And I had never dated a woman before. We hung out and she was shocked, but at that point it was too damn late. So I think there's also, I was projecting something that wasn't true, but I didn't even realize it. But anyway.
Do you think it's okay to lie in poetry? I was reading this book, this writing book, I guess. I don't know what the fuck you call it. And they were doing, like, they had all these different writing prompts at the end of every chapter or whatever. And they're like, it's okay to lie. And I was like, this is interesting. But as I kept reading, they're like, because I hear what you're saying about not bringing certain folks into your experiences or whatever, but they were saying how, like, it's okay to talk about it, maybe change the name up, like how some documentaries like create different identities for characters so they don't really put who it is out there. But it was interesting. And they're saying, like, even if you don't remember exactly if the car was red or blue or whatever, it's okay to still write as much as you can remember to certain experiences. So how do you feel about that?
I just discovered that this summer. So as you know, when I perform features, I get 8 words from the audience and I write a poem kind of on the spot there in that space. And then I perform that poem. So I also do it with friends when I go to open mics. They give me words, I write, I perform it on the mic. And so I did one recently and I had the words, green and house or something. And so I end up writing this poem about a girl looking into the house and the Christmas lights are still up and it's, summer or something. And then it turns out that she has a mother who's bipolar in this case. And so the Christmas lights are always up because they don't end up taking care of like the little things at the house or whatever. But the only reason that I felt comfortable starting with something that was not necessarily true, it was a fictional thing, right? Was because I had these 8 words to work with, which is why I like the 8 words. They force you out of your box. In that poem, I ended up making it about myself and kind of my feelings of how it would be complicated to be a mother and what that looks like. So I sort of circled back, but it reminded me that, fiction is a whole fucking genre. So you can't be a fiction writer and a poet. Now, I do think that because people assume that things are true, it's important. I would think that if you were featuring or something, it would be important to say that. But then in terms of changing the car or the whatever, or the type of clothing you were wearing, or, sure. The other thing that I did recently, I've now written poems that are about more than one person, and it sounds like they're about one person. So you know how you have different experiences with different people? You can write one poem and it can just be about a lot of different people and it just sounds like it's the same fucking person. And that I had never done before and it was very helpful.
That's cool. That's cool. I want to hear more fiction poetry. I feel like I hear a lot of like.
I'm gonna write fiction poetry for the next time I perform.
Yeah, you should do some fiction poetry. I mean, just in general, I feel like every time I hear poetry, it's like it's something that happened to that person.
Oh, I wrote a whole ass. If I can find it, I have one, but I don't have it with me. But I have one that I wrote.
All right, we'll put it in your back pocket. All right, it looks like we have some good stuff coming in the chat.
We have what, like 10 minutes? Rapid fire?
Yeah, so Asha Watson asks, what are you most proud of?
In terms of poetry and art, or in terms of?
It's a pretty broad question. I don't want to speak for Asha. Maybe get some, what in what regards, Asha, as in poetry and art, or what? What exactly are you asking?
I'll give both. So in terms of life, I'm proud that I
Cool.
live on my own. I've had 2 manic episodes in which I needed to be watched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and was literally hallucinating and seeing things. So the ability to live on my own. I almost had a manic episode. I told my doctor I took meds that I needed and I was able to bring myself back. I couldn't drive for weeks. I had to, check in with him a lot for weeks, but I was able to remain on my own because I did the things that I needed to do to stay healthy. So that's the thing I'm most proud of for sure, in terms of my life. And then in terms of my art, I think that I am the most proud of the things that I've been writing this summer that I haven't read that are about gender, that are really scary to write. And I think I'll be even more proud of myself when I actually perform them.
That's what's up. They said in life, but we'll take both those answers. That's awesome. So another question from, I think it's Miko Reed Collins. As a performer, do you ever regret sharing the most intimate parts of yourself?
I don't even regret the time I performed and I had won Best Sex Poet in Boston and my mother was in the front row of the show. Okay. I warned her, but I don't have regrets around the things that were vulnerable to me. I wish that I hadn't performed other people's stories before, but even then, to say it's a regret, I don't know if that's quite the word that I would use.
Okay.
But I was always safe. I will say this. I always had people around me that loved me. And so if I was performing something super vulnerable, because you mentioned vulnerability, I was always in a space where I was safe and I was going to be held. And if I did break down, I would have people that were there to catch me. And that is super important to make sure that you do for yourself.
Nice. Asha said, I think people rarely pat themselves on the back. I love to see this. Miko said, I love it. Thank you so much. For my host, my co-host, or any other, Sherry.
Hey!
Okay. Any other questions? Danielle, Kaniki, Sherry, give y'all the floor real quick.
Sherry, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I was waiting.
Unmuting. Sherry is my favorite workshop facilitator that I've ever taken a workshop with in Washington.
Sherry's the shit.
As an adult human.
Sherry's the shit.
I can't even tell you, but anyway.
In fact, that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you did. It's going to start. It's a huge compliment, and I'm wondering how you were able to pull.
I blushed real easy. I'm going to match the wall behind me. Go ahead.
So, everyone, you're going to get this prompt that I gave in a workshop probably about 2 months ago.
Oh, I know what you're.
Was Tony in this workshop?
Yes, Tony. I think.
Oh, hell no! Where's your poem, Tony?
And
no, Lord, no. Sorry. Go ahead.
And the prompt was something to the effect is, I fear that if I start kissing you, I won't be able to stop.
Ooh. Ooh.
And it was, to be clear, it was an erotic open
It was a love and erotic
workshop.
I could have assumed
Sherry,
that.
now I can't even find that journal. Anyway, keep going.
And she flipped it into a sexual assault poem. LP flipped it into a sexual assault poem. And I mean, if you can't find it, you can't find it. That's fine. I just want to let everybody know that is what LP did with that prompt. And it was the most impressive thing.
Wow.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I guess want to know the place where you were able to pull that from, because I only gave them like 10 minutes to write when I did that. And the poem was so powerful.
That's the thing. I do you write and you can't take your pen or pencil or fingers off the keyboard or pen or pencil off the page thing. Mm-hmm. And I really think that that's super important to do. And ideally you do it for an exercise I talked about earlier that I love is if you do it for 2 minutes and then you take the line that most stands out to you from that and you write it at the top of your next page and then do it for another 2 minutes. And then you take the line that stands out and do it there, you'll like dive really deep. So when I'm writing to 8-word poems or prompts like that, I'll often have pages where I'll start to write and it won't feel right. And then I'll start to, it's a mess, but it circles back and brings me to where I need to be. You have to let it flow through. If you think in the beginning, this is what I'm going to write about, it doesn't work. So I'll say it got there because I had no idea what the fuck I was going to write about. So I just started writing, and clearly that's what had to come out of me that day.
Yeah. If you ever find it, Let the people
I will.
know.
Now I have to fucking look for it. I'll put it on
Let
my
the
list.
people know.
Yes, that poem was deep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Girl Genius, Kaniki?
I actually have two questions. My usual
I'll be
last
quick.
question, one before that.
Mhm.
No, I'm curious. I know we talked at the top of the interview that you kind of have your hands in a lot of different kinds of arts. Is there one that I don't think you've answered this yet. Is there one or more that like you want to do and you haven't done yet?
I miss singing so much. I stopped singing after my dad died for the most part. And I miss it. And I really want a poem where I sing. And I'm going to offend some people out there, but I think those poems are so easy to do badly.
They are.
That I'm going to do it badly. So yes, I would love to sing again. And I would love to write a poem that I sing in.
Coming from someone who cannot sing, I will honestly tell you, I sound like cats being drowned and strangled simultaneously. I can only do like prepubescent and teenage boy bands at karaoke. That's about as good as I get. It's really easy to mess up a singing poem. Yeah.
Oh hell no! That's
And
why I
it
don't
can sound
sing.
cheesy. It can sound like you didn't need to be singing in the first place. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one.
Well, Girl Genius, before you ask I know a question you're about to ask. There's another question from your friend Amanda in the chat.
Yeah,
What's your
and
favorite?
Nikki's got one too.
Oh, go ahead, Kaniki. Damn. Shit.
See, this is why that right there. That's why I love Charity. Right there. That's why I love her. I was going to say, you talked about writing from your own experience, right, and not writing from other people's experiences. I was going to ask, do you feel that it is the writer's responsibility to write what's happening in the times?
As opposed to writing about not the times or other times.
Right, about writing other stuff, like right now that we're living in this, we're living in a pandemic. It's a lot of Black Lives Matters poems. It's coronavirus. Are you writing poems about that? Do you feel that it is the responsibility of a writer to mark the time with their art?
I don't, in terms of people that are writing for themselves, writing, just performing on an open mic every once in a while. I would encourage folks to journal about it and just check in with yourself. I kind of feel like, how could you not be? If you're somebody who writes a lot, how could you not write about something that's current, And if you're not writing anything about that, whether it's a journal or a performance piece, there's probably some shit you're not processing. Let's be honest, right? If writing is your form of doing that. If it's not, you might be doing other things, talking to your friends, whatever. But I never want to say that somebody needs to be doing that and performing about it, especially because it might take a long time, right? COVID just happened. There might be people that have poems about it and are not ready to perform about it for 5 years. And I don't ever want to say, I will say this though, do not be a feature that walks into a room. My favorite open mic, one of my favorites I've ever been to, was Sherry hosting when Trump got elected. It was all sex poems and political poems, which was exactly what the fuck we needed, right? We wanted to hear raunchy ass shit that would distract us and real ass shit about the time. So you can talk about something that is not related and still be related to what is needed. Don't be the feature that gets in there and pretends nothing is going on, because that's unfair to everybody that came for that experience. So if you're performing in a professional setting or you're there to entertain people, you have to know about what's happening, and then you choose. But it has to be appropriate for the times, even if it's not about the times, is my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, one more question. Okay, so since this is art plus therapy, how do you feel about therapy, number one, and how do you feel about using your art for therapeutic reasons?
You had to ask me this at the end? I've been in therapy since the 6th grade, okay? Let's be clear. I think therapy is great. I think therapy is inaccessible. I think therapy is expensive. I unfortunately think that a lot of the new forms of therapy that are coming up can be a little bit dangerous. There was a thing my friend and I were talking about the other day that are therapy cards. They're meant to help couples, I guess, and there are all these questions you can ask each other. And some of them are great, but then there's a whole stack of tough questions that include things like, when was the last time I embarrassed you, or something. If that isn't recent, you don't need to bring up shit from 5 years ago and restart a problem with a deck of cards and no professional in the room. So I think therapy is important. I think doing art as therapy is super healing, whether it's journaling or performing. I think the danger zone is performing. Like I said, make sure you've got people around you that can hold you if you're performing stuff that you need therapy around. I also think that You can learn how to speak to people if you journal about your feelings first, if you don't have experience talking about your feelings, if you're uncomfortable talking about feelings, if you know people that are uncomfortable talking about their feelings, suggest that they try to write about those feelings in a notebook. I really hate those cards. And my friend Amanda is the one who found them, and she's watching this. Yeah, so I think therapy is hugely important, but it's so hard to find. So I also think if you're somebody who's had a lot of therapy, don't be afraid to bring those tools to your friends. Don't tell them what to do at all, but if there's shit you've learned that you're good at, then share what the fuck you learned in therapy so they don't have to pay for it.
That's what great advice.
Word.
Great advice is there.
That is amazing advice.
Okay, there's several questions in the chat. So are you tackling them, Charity?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that because I do think also, and I wonder, I'm interested how everyone feels about this. We're talking about therapy and we're talking about art being used as therapy. I was told one time by another leader of an organization that creates poetry for children, that people, when kids say art is my therapy, and they're like, no, art isn't your therapy. Therapy is your therapy. And I've actually heard that. And so but it also and they made a point, and I kind of got it, but I'm interested in how y'all feel about it. Saying that if something gets brought up in art that is, I won't say problematic, concerning or triggering or raises a red flag, right? How responsible is it for that person holding that space to then be like, okay, I need to get you help or something like that?
No, I always say that poetry is therapeutic. Poetry is not therapy. Mm-hmm. So then that way, if you say it that way, you know that you're releasing some things and and it's helping you because it's therapeutic, but it does not take the place of therapy itself.
Word.
So that's how I would address it. Even I say that to adults, I'd say the same thing with children as well.
I gotta remember, I had a line in a poem. I actually have a line in a poem about this. I think it's I know that art is therapy, but I'm not a therapist. It's the same concept.
Yes.
Well, that's a Snaps line. You know those lines that people talk about after the show? That's a Snaps line for sure.
Word.
I think also if you're working with young people, you need to have professionals.
I agree.
Yes,
100%.
Young people do not have a professional that is there that can give them free therapeutic support. If you don't have that, don't do that workshop. Don't, because the number of times people reveal sexual assault, especially, that's a big one. So that is your responsibility. That support has to be there if you're going to work with young people.
I've actually had multiple conversations about this. So I sit on the committee for two different big national competitions, and the thing that we've been coming back to.
Only two committees of big national competitions.
Yeah. No.
Be humble.
I'm honored, but I come back around to this conversation of having therapists, licensed therapists, or some sort of something in place, because we already know,
Yeah, it's not just young people. I shouldn't have even just said young. It's adults too.
No, it's very, because even
very real.
Because I want to say this, even listening to some of the poems that come out at slams, at traditional slams, and I only say that because I host a love and erotic slam, which is a whole nother beast and animal. When you're in traditional slams, there are so many issues that come out. Even actually regular open mic, there are things that'll come out that will trigger somebody in a way that you just want to make sure that everyone is cared for.
Yeah.
Yep. That should be the end goal. that literally should be the end goal at every open mic, that walk out feeling like you've been cared for.
Word.
Yeah. Writing that down too. I'm going to start saying that when I host events. Girl Genius said, you need to walk out feeling like you've been cared for.
Come on. Art, wine, and a licensed therapist. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I love it.
Not just wine tonight, food too. Everything, right?
Shit. Some art, some wine and some cheese. Cheese is my go-to now. I need to stop though. All right, we got another question, and then I'll let you. Unless there's other questions from y'all, keep them coming. But we have one from Lissa's LP's friend. What is your favorite poem to perform, and what is your favorite poem that you've written? Are they the same? Why or why not?
Fingers is still my favorite poem to perform. Fingers will always be my favorite poem to perform. Oh, that's not true. My first favorite is new shit. I love performing new things. It makes me feel fresh. It makes me feel good. And my second favorite is performing fingers because it's just fun to perform. And what my favorite poem, I'm curious about other artists. For me, it depends, right? Is it my favorite poem to perform? Is it my favorite poem because I feel like it's the best written? Probably the hospice poem about my dad is the poem that I think is, that's not true. I have another poem that I think is the best written, but I haven't decided if I'm allowed to share it yet because it's not just about me. But yeah, so I think, best written, best performance piece, most fun, but fingers, the hospice poem, and then on written on the page poem is this other one called Emergency Action Plan, about having people in my emergency action plan and someone not quite being there when I needed them to be.
Word. Okay, I think that's all the questions from the chat. And Girl Genius, you had another question she like to ask?
Yep. I thought Nikki was about to say something. You're on mute.
Oh, I was wondering, did you get Miko's question?
Yeah,
Did you get
yeah.
question? Oh, you got Miko's question? Okay.
We sure did. We got the other ones up top.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. We're good. So this is always last question. Because now you've gotten to the.
I'm scared.
Okay, wait. Miko got one more, and then we'll get. Miko's asking.
I got time. I'm gonna stretch. Here we go.
Yeah, next to last. So she's got this one. I've got one more. That's it. Last one for her is, what's next for you, and where can we find you? That is a good question.
Yeah. You can throw my Instagram in there. That's really the only social media I'm on. And I'm honestly not on it as often as,
it should be top of the screen.
It's at the top of the screen.
Great. Oh yeah. If I could, notice my surroundings. And then, but also, like I said, I'm super happy if folks are interested in sending me an email and just being on that email list about journaling for sure. And then what's next for me, I don't perform all that often, but I'm about to do a workshop. There's an app that works on getting accurate information to immigrants when they're about to come into the country. And so it gives them, and they have a code that they use. So there's a code that you have that's not your social security number. It's the number you have before you have a social security number. They can look stuff up using that number and they just get really, really accurate information. So that organization has a gala coming up in, I think it's November, and I'm going to be facilitating a workshop at the gala. So that's the next kind of professional thing I have coming up. And then also, hopefully, I always try to feature around my birthday. I didn't do it last year, but I did it the year before, which is in January. So hopefully I'll end up doing that. And if I do, that would be kind of the next time I'd be shooting to perform. But I haven't figured out if I'm going to.
Are you a Capricorn?
I am a Capricorn.
Hey, me too. What's up with the Capricorn?
So is Tony, all the Capricorn.
Yes. Hey, Charity, I see you.
Charity did too.
I can see you right now. I can see.
So if anybody needs a poet in January, let me know, because I like to perform. When I perform on my birthday, that's a little bit for me. I'm not gonna lie.
That's what's up. All right, Danielle.
All right, last one. Here you go. It's always a fun one. Now that you have been on this show, and you heard kind of upfront about what the different topics are, who do you think we should bring on the show as a guest? For any of us?
Okay, you're falling into the danger zone. Charity did this to me once. She said, who should feature? And I sent her about 1,000 names of people. I mean, there's just so many.
Throw 5. We keep a running list. And we may or may not have had some of these people. We've only literally had one repeat in 18 months.
There you go. So, I think that around writing a book, Portia would be a really good one, because I was there for a little bit of her process, but I know what that process was. But Janae would also be really good, because she recently, I think, won a Write Bloody competition about a book. Yes. So that would be another one. Also, though, I work with Game Over Books, which is a publishing company that publishes poetry books, working on it's Black and queer owned, working on getting access to publishing for folks who don't always have access to it. So if you want to talk to publishers, they're actually both owners the owner and the co-founders are also both poets as well. I would say around art and therapy, my friend Kaylee, who talks a lot about having endometriosis, which a lot of people don't know about. It's a medical condition that affects a lot of people with uteruses. God, there's so many. My friend Lewis has a poem about, but I don't know if he's talking about that anymore. Honestly, just shoot me an email. I can send you a list of 1,000 people, there's so many of them.
We will shoot that email.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, Alyssa, we're gonna let you close this out. Did you want to do that one poem?
I really want to do this new 8-word poem. Can I just do them both really fast? Because the 8-word
Yes,
poem.
yes. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
I'm gonna do the hospice.
Oh, not. Oh, she gone.
That one. Oh, you just kicked me off? Just kicking me off. Okay. So I'll close the charity's favorite poem, which is the hospice poem. But I want to read another 8-word poem. It's kind of in the same vein as the one that I already read. You can tell what's been on my mind lately. All right. Charity, I can't look at the screen. So if for some reason you can't hear me, text me or something. All right. Car, vulnerable, wish, mourning, want, tried, let, say, and run are the words that I had to work with. Reach for her eyes. How well she holds to her chest the want I've splayed across the phone, the dinner table, this bar top. Friend says, it's the way she looks at you when you're not looking. She says, what dress? As if the careful precision of selecting an outfit was wasted. Holds close to her chest all the wishes I wish she'd make. Hopes I'm too afraid to say. Friend says, it's the way your face lights up. I'm carving out a space past these walls in my chest while pacing back and forth at the edge of her fingertips. Friend says, have you tried telling her? I don't know what to tell. I do anyway. When I start crying in my car over my first girlfriend, my grief that spilled all over our relationship, whiskey and honey in the tea she made for me, the burns I left on both our tongues. When 8 years later, the wounds are so fresh, I might as well still be bleeding. When I stop at a light and realize my nails have dug through the leather of the steering wheel. When I see the sneakers in the passenger seat, pull over and run, sweat working just as well as tears, panic releasing to a dull hum. Friend says, I'd be confused too. She says, how do you know you like me? I know because every time I hear your voice, I can be sure we are both about to grow, can pretend we'll build a home big enough to hold all that knowledge we share. Friend says, that's so romantic. She says, you're probably saying the exact same thing to a bunch of other people. How well she holds to her chest, what fear, distrust. The only competition here is reruns of love slipping away so fast, I wonder if it was even ever there. Our gravestones I can visit and ones I'll never get to. I pull her chair closer. She sees the sneakers hiding under the table. Friend says, what do you want? I lace up and run. So that's that 8-word poem I wrote during an open mic, I think, or at home or something. All right, last one. So my dad died in hospice care in 2008. If you don't know about hospice care, it's another way that our medical system is failing us. It's really important. And a lot of hospices have been closed or torn down. And the one where he died no longer exists. They have removed all the beds. Who wants to sleep where others have died? All of us. All of us who wear someone's old sweater, who cried at the funerals and would have crawled in with the carcass if it meant 5 more minutes of pretending. All of us who have ever slept next to a hospital twin with its tight sheets and perfect corners mocking our mess. But the beds are gone, and the pillows, and my SAT practice tests in the recycle bin, and the stuffed animal I won for you in the claw machine, and the IVs, and the pill calendars, and the nurse's notes, and the old TV guide marking every Law & Order episode we ever watched. The tables and chairs get wheeled out, thrown into a dumpster in the middle of the parking lot, and they rip the toilet from the floor. A crack from your forehead still in its side, and for a moment, I'm staring at a rectangle where a door used to be, and I wonder if they at least tried to redesign the building, give it a fresh coat of paint, if they decided there was no way to strip the dying from its structure, and we tried that. You fought so hard to redecorate your dying thing. I'm unfazed as they remove the paintings and the rugs because I grew up in all the comforts that produce mediocre art like this, but that day, the body wheeled out before the wrecking ball. It finally gave me something to write about. There's a man on the gears guiding the smashing. I can't remember if the building ever had a second floor, but when they come through the side wing, I think of Aaron sitting in the waiting room, of you smiling at my friend like this was any other Sunday, Each beam releases another memory, I guess, because there's no building left to store them. They've come for the grass around the parking lot now. I once sank my hands into that earth, wanting to be closer to the place we both knew you were going. They rip up the plants, pour cement over the mulch, and I'm learning a lot about destruction. How they don't even have to undo the thing that was. They just cover it up. The industry tripled in the 2 years after you died, and they called it privatized, and I don't know who could turn a profit on death like America. And I want to ask the construction company what they did with all the drawings the kids who only remember their parents through pictures now used to paint all over those hospice walls. So when a brick shatters at my feet, I reach for your ring. Remember fingers disappearing like your cheeks did. And when they smash a window, I wince so loud, a bird flies away and your eyes go dark again. You can't remember the days of the week. And when they knock down a tree and it hits a power line, the last TV goes black. I'm in your room telling you the plot of the last Law & Order episode we ever watched. I look over to see if you're listening and it's all gone now. It's just exposed bone. I kneel low to the ground, leave my palm prints in the wet cement. And when I come back a week later, they've paved over those too.
Can I just say wow for everybody?
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's my favorite poem. Ah, God, I love that poem. Tony, that's my
Yeah, that
Tony's
poem
favorite
is
poem.
everything.
Jesus. Oh, I feel that to my
Mm.
core.
Thank you.
Feel that to my core. You're getting a lot of love in the chat too.
I can't
lot
see
of
the
love.
chat. I should probably go to the Facebook.
Someone said resonating with this poem. As we speak, I so love that line. No one better at turning a profit on death than America. Come on. Powerful. Thank you for that poem. Beautiful poem. Sorry for your loss. Super dope LP. Fire interview and charity. Thank you. And excellent podcast platform, ladies. Thank you on behalf of us. Heard it a few times and still get chills, and that's from your friend Amanda. So yeah.
That piece is everything.
Yeah.
Well, Sherry, I'm gonna kick it to Sherry. Dude. Oh no, go ahead. Listen, Sherry or LP, whoever.
Yeah, LP. First off, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you really quick. And I just also wanted to shout out for people that are listening, how important it is to keep coming back. A lot of virtual spaces that have been created, people forget the importance of them. And for folks who are still immunocompromised, who have health concerns, for folks who have social anxiety, for folks who geographically are in places where there's not therapy and there's also not a lot of arts events, the virtual space has been truly important and remains important. So just keep supporting virtual spaces like this, because what y'all are doing here is super, super important.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to watch any of our other interviews, everyone that we've done on StreamYard, we switched platforms in May. So all of our interviews since May are live right here on or live on YouTube. So you can go follow us on YouTube and be notified of when we'll go live or when we post a new episode. And we really appreciate everyone that comes through. It has definitely been a learning experience for all of us in some way, shape, or form. I will be back next week as your hostess with the mostest, with the from Texas joining us, the amazing Masterpiece. I cannot wait to get into this interview. And I'm also going to let y'all know I will be back in 2 weeks with From Behind the Microphone with America's Got Talent winner, Brandon Leaks. So, so definitely come back. Everyone, please stay safe. Wash your hands. Be safe. Put on internet condoms too, because people are getting ransomware. And we will see y'all all back in next week.
And wear your masks.
Yeah, wear your mask and things. I gotta pack mine because I'm going on vacation too. Bye, y'all.
We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Bye.